So one story that comes to mind was when I was in a city called Solnoke. It was the second area that I served in. And it was in the middle of the summer. It was one of those hot summers that we had talked about earlier. And my companion and I, we had planned to go tracting that afternoon. And it was a Saturday. And it was a hot Saturday, and we were also fasting that day. And we had decided that transfer to fast once a week to find people that were prepared to receive the gospel. And so that Saturday we were fasting, and it was really hot, and we'd been out kind of street contacting for a little bit. And then we decided to go to an area of the city that we hadn't really been to very much. We knew of one person that had lived over on the other side of the city, and we thought, okay, well, let's just head over there and go tract over there since we have a lot of time. We had quite a few hours to devote to tracting because we didn't have any other teaching appointments, but it was okay. And so we headed over to this other side of the city, and as we were going, we were walking down this one street, and we both saw this building, and we both kind of just stopped and looked at it. And I looked at her and I said, do you want to go try that building? And she's like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. So we kind of backtracked and we crossed the street over to this building, and we got to the building, and at all the buildings in Hungary, for the most part, at the bottom, there is kind of a doorbell type system, because the doors, there's usually a door at the bottom of the building that is locked, so really only residents can go in and out. And so at the door, there's also this doorbell bell system type thing, and there is the name of all of the occupants. And then you can press their button to ring up to them in their apartment, and then they can let you into the building. So every time we went tracting, it was like, okay, we have to get into the building first. So a lot of times we tell people, we have a message we want to share with people, will you let us in? And sometimes they'd say no. A lot of times they'd say no, but then you'd ring into someone and they'd say, oh, okay, yeah, sure, come in. Or sometimes they'd say, yeah, come in, but just don't come to my door. And so we tried probably 6 or 7 people at this building. And then after a while, we kind of thought, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't go to this building, because after a while, all the tenants can kind of hear the bell being rung into other apartments. And so they're more hesitant to let you in. And so my companion, she said, oh, try number, and I can't remember the exact number. She said, try this number. I thought, okay, we'll try one more. And so we tried it, and we didn't say anything, and then the guy just let us in. We hadn't said a word, and he just buzzed us in. And so we got into the building, and it was this really big building. It was about 4 stories high, but there were probably about 25 or 30 people that lived on each floor. There were probably about 25 to 30 different apartments on the floor. And so we started at the top of on the 4th floor, and we went, every door. And no one was really interested that day. We went down to the 3rd floor. No one wanted to talk to us. A couple people were a little annoyed that we were bothering them on their Saturday. And we're also, at this point, we're like a little hot, a little tired, hadn't eaten because we were fasting. And it was, I think, about 4 o'clock or so. And so we went down to the 2nd floor, and then we got down to the 1st floor of the building, and we knocked on the door, and this man kind of peeks his head out from behind the door. And he's like, what do you want? And, he said, hi, I'm Sister Oberhansley. We're missionaries. And he said, and we told him, we had a message that we wanted to share. And he said, okay, well, will you be here in like 15 minutes? And we're like, okay, we can be, yeah, well, we can be here, we'll be here. And so then he kind of like closes the door, and we're like, okay, well, at least someone wants to talk to us. And so then we kind of finished tracting around the rest of the floor, and we thought, okay, we'll go try this guy again. And we knocked on the door, because he hadn't come out yet, and we thought he would come out for sure, but he hadn't come out. And so we knock on the door again, and so he answers, and he says, oh, hi. And so we tell him, we have this message, kind of tell him what we're about. And he said, oh, are you the Mormons? And we said, yes, we are. And so he says, oh, come in. And and then I asked him, if he was by himself, because at that point, we knew we shouldn't meet with members of the opposite sex by ourselves. And he said, yeah, but come in. I've always been curious about the Mormons. And so we're thinking, oh dear. And, and so, we told him that we couldn't meet with him right then, but if he wanted to meet us at the branch house, that we'd love to meet with him sometime. And he said, oh, okay. And so we set up an appointment for the following week at the branch house. And then I said, okay, can I get your phone number? And he said, oh, I don't have a phone number. And so I'm thinking, like, oh, he's not going to come. He doesn't want to give us his phone number. He's just, being nice. And so he set up with us, and we thought, okay, well, hopefully he comes. And it was interesting because before we knocked on his door, instead of going back to follow up, we're like, well, like maybe we'll just go home and break our fast and, go, have dinner and then plan and everything. But we just really felt like, okay, we need to talk to this guy. And so I was trying not to, be skeptical or anything. It's like, okay, he's going to come. He really is interested. And so the next week he came to the appointment, and we were both a little surprised that he actually came, just because we didn't necessarily think that he would. And he later told us that when we had knocked on his door the first time, that he had gotten out of the bathtub to answer the door. And so that's why he kind of peeked his head out from behind the door. And which was funny. And so when we met with him, before we had even taught him anything, he said, so who else did you find in my building that day? And we told him that we had found no one else, because no one else wanted to talk to us that day. And he just kind of smiled, and I asked him, why he had asked. And he said, well, God knew you needed to come find me, and that's why nobody else talked to you. And we just, looking back on the experience, we just thought, oh my goodness, we were so guided to that man, because we hadn't planned on tracting his building. We almost didn't get into his building. We almost didn't go back to his door, because we thought, oh, we'll just go home and break our fast. He didn't seem really interested anyway. But all those little things, I know the Lord is in the details of everything. And I know that the Holy Ghost guided us to this man who needed the gospel, and who recognized that God had led us to him. And we taught him for the last little while, and after I'd left the city, other missionaries taught him too, and he did get baptized. And he was so funny. He would always, tell members of the story about how we found him, and about how it all happened. And it really is just such a blessing. And I guess to me, that story just illustrates a lot of principles, that if we are seeking to go out and do the Lord's work, if we have a plan, and we're going to go find people, if we're willing to sacrifice, by fasting or by doing whatever it is to do so, then the Lord will guide us to people who are prepared. Because I know that man was prepared, and he was waiting for us, and he didn't know it, and we didn't know it, but by following the Spirit, and by trying to do the Lord's will, and by trying to listen to the Spirit, we were able to find him that day, and he was able to accept the gospel. And it really is just incredible. And I feel like there are so many stories like that can be told. And I just feel so blessed to reflect back on my mission and think about all those times where we really were just guided. It wasn't us. We were willing. We wanted to do the Lord's work, and we wanted to find his children that needed the gospel, but he was the one orchestrating it all the whole time, and he just allowed us to be part of those little miracles.